Welcome to another CHRO Conversation, hosted by the Center for Executive Succession at the Darla Moore School of Business. I'm your host, Anthony Nyberg, and today we are speaking with Lucien Alziari. Lucien is the Executive Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer at Prudential Financial, a Fortune 50 financial services company. Prior to Prudential, Lucien was the CHRO of AP Moller Maersk, a global shipping and energy conglomerate with about 90,000 employees and operations in over 130 countries worldwide. Prior to that, Lucien was the CHRO of Avon Products. He also formerly served on the board of directors of Clarks, a UK-based global footwear company, and was the chair of CES. Lucien, it is really always a sincere and great treat to have you back on campus, so thank you.
Thank you. Great to be here again.
So I would like to start with just thinking about when you think about what the big challenges are, particularly from an HR perspective or driving organizational success from an HR perspective, what's top of mind for you right now?
Well, I think the fundamental question is always, are we setting up our companies to win? And I think the biggest challenge for CHROs is actually not getting distracted from that, because there's a lot of stuff that's sort of in and around us. But I think staying focused on what is it that we do that really does make a difference to the company's ability to win, that's our number one role. And so I work pretty hard at trying to stay focused on the things that really matter. I also try and be curious about what's out there that's potentially interesting. What are those emerging themes? But not to get overly distracted by them either.
How do you keep that focus when, if you open the news this morning, we have problems. We have wars going on in the world, and we have high inflation, and we have trade wars going on. And of course, people are concerned about AI and still a talent war and et cetera. So how do you keep that focus?
I like to know about all of the issues that you've just talked about. So I spend a fair amount of time purposefully outside of the company so that I understand the world within which we operate and are trying to succeed. So I stay pretty current on what's happening politically, economically, ideas and all of that, because I think that gives me a perspective then on what really is going to matter for Prudential as we go forward. In order to have that capacity, then I'm quite choiceful about where do I spend my time within the company. People talk a lot about prioritization, and there are two parts, and I think people get very focused on the first part, which is what am I going to focus on, and that's really, really important. But there's another side that's prioritization, which is you're consciously choosing the things that you're not going to focus on. And I'm pretty disciplined about both sides of that equation.
When you say you're really good about looking outside, and for a long time in the HR perspective, there was an outside in, but that was more about customer focus, I think. And you're talking about really understanding world dynamics. And is that from the perspective of how it'll affect your customers?
It's from the perspective of how does it impact our ability to succeed as a company. And so, let's think about the example of we live in an environment of, I would say, let's say, heightened political debate right now. That clearly has implications for our customers. We have individual customers, we have institutional customers, we have states of the United States that are our customers, and we clearly need to understand who they are, how we can best serve them. That heightened political debate also clearly impacts our employees. They live in their communities, they bring that with them into the workplace. They have their own beliefs, and so understanding what's that context and then how does that impact our employees, and particularly how does that impact their ability to serve customers, which at the end is really why we're in business. So that's just an example of how I think understanding outside in gives you an ability to operate at a higher level.
And then drilling down on a couple of things you said there. One of them is about this heightened politicalization of almost everything that's happening. And I certainly thought in 2016 that that was the peak that it could ever be. And then 2020 turned out to be an even higher peak. And this year, perhaps even more. How do you, with a really diverse set of customers and a diverse set of employees, how do you manage in this kind of environment?
Yeah, I think it's a continuing challenge for all of us. You know, we're all human beings. We all have our own beliefs. We all have our set of perspectives about, you know, what's important, and we bring that into the workplace. But also, the workplace is a place for work and to stay focused on serving the needs of customers. And so, one of the things that I remember coming to the United States many years ago is you don't talk about politics at work, and it's still pretty good advice, actually. You also need to remember that, you know, our workforce it's the voice of America. There's going to be that whole spectrum of points of view. And we have to respect that everybody will have their own individual points of view on issues and all that goes along with that. But we also have a company environment that we believe in very strongly and a set of values that we believe in very strongly. So you don't get a pass on respect for others, all right? We are a company that believes very strongly in the respect that we have for each other and that we will treat each other with respect, and you don't get any passes on that. And so you can believe whatever you choose to believe, and I have no say in that. When you're at Prudential, you behave in a way that works for us as a company, and that's how we continue to have a culture that we're actually quite proud of and we enjoy working in.
And I think somewhat relatedly, Prudential has always been a company that has, at least from the outside, appeared to really care about a broad set of stakeholders. I mean, it's amazing for your own local community and employees and, of course, shareholders. Is that still an important consideration, do you think, for your organization, or maybe at most?
Oh, for us, it's fundamental to who we are, and so you know, we have a very clear purpose as a company. We've done quite a lot of work on you know, what's the role that we play within the world. I don't think you can be a successful company unless you are a good neighbor. Newark has been our home for pretty much 150 years. It will be in 18 months' time. And there have been times when other companies chose to leave Newark. We've been very committed to Newark. It'll be our home, I think, forever. It's actually something that is a real rallying point for our employees. They're proud to work for a company that is a good citizen, that is helping the local community to grow and thrive. You know, there were lots of debates over the years about the nature of capitalism and should it all just be the focus on the shareholder. And I believe good companies always knew that you will achieve your best returns for shareholders over the long term if you're a good citizen, if you are committed to the growth and development of your people, if you are a good player within the world in terms of environment and all of the sort of the ESG debate that's going on. And so I think that notion of sort of it became the balanced scorecard, but that was just another expression of there are multiple constituencies that we need to pay attention to within a company, and all of them are important, and one is never so important that you forget about all of the others.
And so is that the response to people that are really arguing that point about that if you help the local community or help the employees, you're not focused enough on the shareholders? Is it that that the shareholders will get that return over the long term?
Absolutely, yeah. And if you think about the experience that so many of us had through the pandemic, through COVID, it really forced us to come back to, well, what is it that we really believe? Because we were facing a lot of challenges. And we came back to, we're going to take care of our employees first. Their health and safety is number one priority. If we do that, they will take care of customers. If you take care of customers, generally over the long term, companies that take care of their customers have very good financial outcomes for shareholders. And so having that set of beliefs, which isn't a belief in one, it's a belief in how you serve several, but sometimes there's a sequencing that comes with that. I think that's very helpful and can provide a compass sometimes when you're in these more difficult waters.
And you are known for taking care of your employees very well. And I think that shows up in that you even have lower turnover rates than many of your competitors, et cetera. So from your perspective, both is the Great Resignation, is it over, and or was there ever such a thing if we look back on it now in hindsight?
I think there was definitely a period of heightened mobility in the marketplace. And so whether that was a resignation, rotation, consultants can figure out how to make money from that. We had higher turnover than we'd had before, but we had lower turnover than our peers. And so we experienced the same theme, but from a lower baseline. I think as you watch the way the economy is developing now, it's kind of normalizing. But what's interesting to me is, how are companies treating their employees in both sides of that development? So the companies that during the pandemic were all about the employee, and then it's like, oh, now the shoe can be on the other foot. I wouldn't work for companies like that. And so I think values and belief in employees, you see it across the whole cycle. And employees know that as well. So I think we've tried to keep a pretty balanced perspective. And look, companies have to make business decisions that sometimes will lead to adjusting our workforce, sometimes saying that we will need fewer people working for us than we had before. Employees understand that, but they know companies that are making those decisions still with care for the employee and making sure that we can do the best job that we can to get them set up for the next step of their careers as well.
So are you expecting, or are you already seeing realization by employees that some firms were great firms to work for when they had to be, when there was this ultra competition, but now maybe are a little bit less so, and that's going to drive where the better employees want to go?
Haven't seen any conclusive data on that, but I think anecdotally, a couple of sides of that. One is the whole debate around inclusion and diversity. After the summer of 2020, a lot of companies made public commitments around that, and I think many, and it's good for America, many were very authentic about those commitments, and they're sticking with it, their long-term commitments, and I think that's good for all of us. There are some that clearly responded to that because they had to and are looking for a way out of that. And I think similarly, employees have memories about how did my company treat me during tough times? Have they been consistent on that? Does it really speak to a set of values that help them through good times and tough times? Or was that just situational because they had to? I will tell you, it's a pretty good recruiting market in financial services because different companies are taking different postures on return to the office. Do they really trust their employees? We trust our employees. We're getting quite a lot of calls.
And is that how you see it, the return to work? If you're forcing people back, or if you're demanding they come back every day, that's a sign of a lack of trust in employees?
I can't speak for other companies, and they will have their reasons. Many times there are good business reasons for higher frequency than we were having during the pandemic. So I don't have any question about that at all. But if the reason you're saying, I want you back in the office, is I don't trust you to get the work done, that hasn't been our experience, I'll just say that.
Because you, from the very, very, very early, you were saying the world has changed. We're never going to be back into a full 9 to 5 5 days a week, force people to come back.
Yep.
You're still feeling that that's the way it's going to be?
I still believe that. Now, I think we're still yet to settle exactly on where it ends up. So I think it's still evolving. We proved to ourselves that you don't need to be in an office to get work done, right? We also probably learned along the way that bringing people together is helpful to get some work done. Collaborative driven work, idea generation work, teamwork, obviously is done better when people are together. Cultures are built when people are together. So I think we know the factors in the equation. It's kind of what's the balancing of the factors within the equation. And so I believe that there will be a balancing between the flexibility that we know employees really value, and I value it as an individual, but also there's a requirement to do collaborative work, and there's definitely a requirement to keep and sustain cultures. And so hybrid doesn't mean 100% remote, but nor does it need to become 100% in the office. I personally think that we're not going back to 100% in the office. Now, I'd also say we're all a function of our business model as well. So different companies have different business models. The work is always going to be the driver of decisions about how and where work gets done.
So do you have a kind of a personal framework for when you think is kind of the mix to have people? I mean, obviously some people have to be in all the time, they're frontline employees but do you have a kind of a sense of what you think is a good balance for those that do have that flexibility?
No, I mean, I have a point of view, but this almost becomes like it's religious belief at the moment. Everybody's got an opinion on it, and I have an opinion, but I don't think I have a more data-based view than others. I do have a strong conviction that it isn't 0 and it isn't 5.
Obviously, one of the things that people are talking about kind of nonstop is AI in HR. So is AI going to save everything? Is it going to change the world and fix this? Those are two different questions, really, maybe three.
I think I'd start by saying, AI is a overall banner headline for actually many, many things. And so I always ask people in these conversations about, well, what do we mean by AI? Because sometimes they mean a little bit of data, sometimes they really do mean artificial intelligence. Sometimes they mean generative artificial intelligence.
Well, let's just start on the data part, because I know you've talked about data analytics for a long time. So can you just expound on why that's critical for the HR function?
Well, I think data is important for any discipline in any business. I mean, facts are helpful. And the more facts, generally, the better the decision you will make if you've got the good decision-making mechanisms as well. So, I don't know, I've just found flying blind doesn't seem to help either. So it's kind of one of nature's laws that data is a helpful thing to have.
Then what really changed the world, it seems to, or at least brought it to everyone's consciousness, was the large language models, right? So do you see a way that it fundamentally changes how we do work, either in the HR space or more broadly, or is it another incremental step that maybe makes things more efficient? How are you seeing the world?
I don't think we know yet, and I think it's probably somewhere between those two. So I don't think it's another incremental step. I think it's bigger than that, but nor do I think it's like the end of the world or the fundamental change in knowledge work, but it's going to be a fairly important change, particularly to knowledge work, if we can all figure out how to do it responsibly and constructively. And so, I guess I've been part of the same learning journey as everybody else. There was a point in time when ChatGPT suddenly came onto the airwaves, and it was like, wow, this is the thing. And I still think that there is a lot of potential for how do we automate out the work that actually people don't enjoy doing so that they can do more higher added value work. particularly in the world of knowledge work, because I think if you look at the last 20, 30 years, there's been enormous productivity in the sort of manual labor. There's been much less productivity in knowledge work. And so there's definitely an opportunity there. But we also have to be very, very mindful of there are some downsides to this, and we need to understand those and do this in a responsible way and a thoughtful way. And so I saw everybody sprinting out of the blocks, and now everybody is sort of, not everybody, but many are taking a more measured view, use cases, testing it, making sure they understand what it is. And then society at large can have debates about whether it's, you know, the thing that will end mankind or whatever else. But our job is to figure out how do we apply it to our business.
And I know you're very thoughtful about thinking of frameworks and ways to really implement many things and think about the world. Do you have that yet for AI, whether it's a decision rules for when to use AI or otherwise? Have you formed something like that yet?
Not yet, although I've been actually learning from some of my peers. So I was listening to Nicole Lamoureux at IBM just recently, and they had I thought, some very good principles about AI will help people make decisions, but it will never become the decision maker. So those kinds of things, you know, when you find them, it's like, yeah, that really, really makes sense. Let's bring that in. I think each company needs to sort of find their frameworks for themselves, and we're still in the testing phase, so we haven't quite got to here's the framework with which we will apply it, but trying to learn from others along the way.
Well, I hope you'll come back and tell us when you figure this all out.
It may be a while, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lucien, as always, thank you for coming. It's a great treat for us.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
You just listened to another sensational CHRO conversation. Today, Lucien Alziari of Prudential Financial shared his views about how HR drives business success. He also reminded us of the importance of recognizing how HR should prioritize the issues that drive organizational success, including making sure that we are truly focusing on ensuring that the company has the talent and capabilities to win. On behalf of all of us who are associated with the Master of Human Resources program and the Center for Executive Succession here at the University of South Carolina, thank you for joining us.